These 19 tractor features are so dangerous, they've crushed, flipped, burned, and even seriously injured or trapped hundreds of farmers, from spinning death shafts to machines that launch you like a rocket. Here are the 19 most dangerous American tractor features you've never heard of. Let's kick things off with the first feature, and trust me, it's way more dangerous than it sounds. 1. Lack of ROPS. A lot of old American tractors that were made before the 1980s didn't come with something called ROPS, which stands for Rollover Protective Structure. Basically, it's like a strong metal frame or cage that protects the driver if the tractor flips over. Without it, if your tractor rolls, you could get crushed underneath. And this isn't just some random warning, it's actually one of the top reasons people die in tractor accidents. Around 130 farmers lose their lives every year because of rollovers. What makes it worse is that many older tractors are still being used today, especially on small farms or by people who buy second-hand equipment. These machines might work fine, but the danger is real if they don't have ROPS. The good news is that if your tractor does have ROPS and you wear your seatbelt, you're almost fully protected, like 99% safe. 2. No seatbelt. Even if a tractor has a roll bar or a safety cage, like ROPS, it doesn't mean you're completely safe. If the tractor flips and you're not wearing a seatbelt, you can still get thrown out of your seat. That's when it gets really dangerous. You could fly out and get crushed by the tractor or even by the roll bar itself. It's kind of ironic. Something built to protect you could end up hurting you just because you weren't strapped in. Newer tractors usually come with seat belts because people now realize how important they are. But a lot of older tractors either don't have seat belts at all or the belts are broken and no one bothers to fix them. And even if they do have belts, many people just don't wear them. Maybe they think it's unnecessary or uncomfortable, but that's super risky. Wearing a seat belt is a small thing that can make a huge difference. 3. Exposed power takeoff, PTO shaft. Tractors usually have something at the back called a PTO shaft. PTO stands for power takeoff, and it's used to power stuff like mowers, tillers, or other farming tools. This shaft spins really fast, like 540 to 1,000 times per minute. That's super fast. The problem is, if that shaft isn't covered properly, it's a huge danger. If your clothes, hair, or even part of your body gets too close, it can pull you in almost instantly. People have lost arms and even their lives this way. A lot of old tractors don't have a cover or shield on the PTO shaft. Sometimes it's missing because it broke and wasn't replaced, or people removed it to make repairs and just left it off. Either way, it's really unsafe. Modern tractors usually have guards to prevent these kinds of accidents, but older ones often don't. And let's be honest, when you're working on a farm, you're tired and distracted sometimes, so one wrong move near that spinning shaft could be the end. And just when you thought it couldn't get scarier, the next feature is full of fast-moving death traps. 4. Exposed belts, chains, and pulleys. Older tractors have a lot of parts that are just out there. I'm talking about things like fan belts, chains, pulleys, and gears, all the stuff that makes the engine and other parts run. These things spin fast and have a ton of force behind them. The problem? On vintage tractors, they're often not covered at all. No guard, no shield, nothing. So, if your shirt sleeve or hoodie string gets too close, it can get caught and pull you in before you even know what's happening. It's not just scary, it's deadly. You could end up with broken bones, serious cuts, or worse. Modern tractors are way better with safety. They follow rules from places like OSHA, that's the safety people, and they say all those moving parts should be covered. But back in the day, they didn't think about stuff like that. And because a lot of those older tractors are still around and being used, people are still getting hurt. Sometimes farmers even take the guards off to make repairs easier and then forget to put them back. It's just not worth it. If you're using an older tractor, always check for exposed belts or chains. 5. Outdated braking systems. If you've ever driven or seen an old tractor, you might notice it doesn't stop like a regular car or even a modern tractor. That's because many old tractors use a really old-school kind of brake system. Instead of one brake pedal that works evenly on both back wheels, they usually have two pedals, one for each rear wheel. And even crazier, some just have a single transmission brake that works through the gears. That kind of setup can get super sketchy really fast, especially if the brakes are worn out or not properly adjusted. So let's say you're going down a hill and you press the brake. If one side grabs more than the other, the tractor might spin or suddenly pull to one side. That can mess up your steering or even cause a rollover. It's even more dangerous when the ground is uneven or wet. Newer tractors use hydraulic brakes that are way more balanced and reliable. But with old tractors, you've got to constantly check and adjust the brakes yourself, and not everyone knows how to do that right. Some insurance and safety experts even warn people to make sure both brakes are equal, or you're asking for trouble. 6. High hitching point. This is one of the scariest dangers with tractors, and a lot of people don't even know it can happen. So here's the deal. If you try to pull something really heavy, like a log or a stuck car, and you attach the chain or rope too high on the tractor, like above the drawbar, it can flip over backward in a second. And I'm not exaggerating. The front wheels lift off the ground, and the whole tractor tips over on top of you. That kind of accident can kill you instantly. The drawbar is the place low on the back of the tractor that's designed to handle towing. But people often think, hey, let's hook it up higher so it's easier to pull. That's a huge mistake. When the pulling force is too high, the back tires act like a lever and just throw the front end straight up. NIOSH, a government safety group, has warned people about this because it keeps happening, especially with older tractors that don't have modern safety designs. Even if you use the drawbar like you're supposed to, you still have to be careful. If the load is off-center or gets stuck suddenly, the tractor can still tip. So don't mess around with high hitching points or pulling heavy stuff in unsafe ways. This next one is so dangerous it can flip your tractor over in a second, literally. 7. Improper hitch location. This one's kind of sneaky because it doesn't look dangerous, but it absolutely is. A lot of people mess up by hooking a chain or rope too high on the back of a tractor when they're trying to pull something heavy, like a stuck trailer or a log. Instead of attaching it to the drawbar, which is the low part designed for towing, they wrap it around the axle or another high spot. That's a huge mistake. What happens is the pulling force ends up way too high and it shifts the tractor's balance. As soon as you start pulling, the front wheels shoot up and the whole tractor flips backward in like a second. It's called a rear overturn, and it's one of the deadliest types of tractor accidents. The scariest part? This still happens a lot, especially with older tractors. On vintage models, the hitch points aren't always labeled clearly, so people just guess. Or they're in a hurry and wrap a chain around whatever's close. But doing that can literally be the last thing you do. Safety experts say it's one of the fastest ways to get killed using a tractor. Always use the drawbar and keep the chain or rope as low as possible. 8. Narrow front or tricycle design. Back in the day, a lot of tractors were made with a super narrow front end. Some had two tiny wheels really close together, and others had just one front wheel in the center. People called it the tricycle style because it looked like one. It was popular because it made turning in tight spaces easier, especially for row crop farming. But honestly, it's one of the most unstable tractor designs ever. These tractors tip over sideways way more easily than modern ones. When you're driving a tractor with a narrow front, the balance is all off. If you make a sharp turn, drive over a hole, or even hit a small bump on uneven ground, the tractor can flip to the side, just like that. Even if you're not going fast, that little shift in balance is all it takes to cause a side rollover. And since many of these old tractors also don't have seat belts or ROPS, a rollover could seriously injure or kill you. Nowadays, tractor makers don't use the tricycle design anymore because it's just too risky. But a lot of farmers still use old tractors like that because they're cheap or part of the family farm. If you ever have to drive one, you've got to be super careful. 9. High center of gravity. Tractors might look strong and steady, but they're not as balanced as you think, especially older ones or tractors with big attachments. A lot of them have something called a high center of gravity. That means most of the weight sits up high, like the engine, fuel tank, or even a front-end loader. When the weight is up top instead of low to the ground, the whole machine becomes easier to tip over. So what does that mean for someone driving? It means the tractor is more likely to roll over, especially if you're working on a hill, going over bumps, or turning fast. Even stopping suddenly can throw off the balance. Add in tall tires or big buckets on the front, and it's like you're driving a tower on wheels. One small move the wrong way, and boom, the whole thing can roll. Things are about to tip, literally. Because number 10 is where speed meets disaster. 10. Fast turns. Even though turning or going up a hill sounds pretty normal, it can actually be one of the most dangerous things to do on a tractor, especially an older one. Tractors aren't like cars. They're taller, heavier, and not great at quick moves. If you turn too fast or drive sideways on a hill, the whole machine can roll over in seconds. What's scary is that about 85% of tractor rollovers happen to the side. And it's almost always because of going too fast, turning too sharply, or driving close to the edge of something like a ditch or embankment. Older tractors are worse at handling this because they don't have things like traction control or smart brakes like newer ones do. So, if you're hauling something big like a plow or trailer and you whip a turn, that weight can easily make the tractor tip over. The same thing happens if you try to go across a steep slope. One wrong bounce or loose patch of ground, and it's game over. 11. Open operator station. Most modern tractors have enclosed cabs, like a little room with a seat, windows, and sometimes even AC. But a lot of old tractors? Nope. They're just an open metal seat out in the open air. That might seem cool on a nice day, but it's actually really dangerous. Without a cab or a strong frame around you, there's nothing to protect you if something goes wrong. You hit a big bump or a root, you can fly right out of the seat. Hit your head on a tree branch, you're down for the count. Older tractors also usually have really basic seats. No shoulder support, no armrests, and definitely no seat belt. So if the tractor jerks or bounces hard, you can literally get launched out of your seat. Imagine going over rough ground with nothing but a thin seat holding you in. It doesn't take much to lose control. And don't even get me started on bad weather or dust. With no cab, you're just exposed to everything. Rain, sun, flying rocks, you name it. That's why safety experts say if you're using a tractor with no cab, you've got to be extra cautious. 12. No fops. If you're using a tractor with a front-end loader, those big scoop things on the front, there's another major danger a lot of people ignore: falling stuff. Whether it's a branch, a tool, or even something from the bucket itself. If it falls down while you're working, it can hit you right in the head. That's why modern tractors with loaders are supposed to have something called FOPS, or Falling Object Protective Structure. It's basically like a strong roof or shield above your seat to protect you from anything that might fall. But tons of older tractors don't have this. They weren't built with FOPS in mind. So if you're driving under a tree, moving heavy materials, or just messing with tools up high, you've got nothing protecting your head. If something slips or the loader tips back even a little, it can drop stuff straight onto the driver. Even a small tool falling from 5 feet up can cause serious injuries. That's why safety experts say every tractor with a front loader should have FOPS. If yours doesn't, you're taking a big risk every time you lift something. It might not seem like a big deal, but accidents happen super fast. A little bump or jolt could send that bucket or its contents flying. We're not done dropping danger yet. Number 13 can crush you in an instant. 13. Unstable 3-point hitch. The 3-point hitch on the back of a tractor is super useful. It's where you attach things like plows, tillers, and other heavy tools. But if you don't handle it right, it can be deadly. The problem is that most old tractors don't have a lock that holds the hitch in place if the hydraulics fail. That means if the tractor suddenly loses hydraulic pressure, like from a leak or a broken part, the whole attachment can drop instantly. And we're not talking about a little bump. These things are heavy enough to crush someone to death on the spot. There's a real story about a farmer who was working on a cultivator and it just dropped on him because the hydraulic cylinder leaked. He didn't even have a chance to react. That's how fast it happens. Older tractors are especially risky because they don't come with safety pins or mechanical locks that hold the equipment up when the engine is off or the hydraulics go bad. If you ever have to work under or near a raised attachment, you've got to block it properly. Use strong wood or metal supports, not random bricks or small stuff that can crack or slip. 14. Battery and fuel hazards. Old tractors can be kind of sketchy when it comes to their batteries and fuel systems. Back then, safety wasn't as strict, so a lot of these machines have open, exposed batteries and simple gas tanks with basic fuel lines. If you look closely, you might even see wires or rubber hoses that look worn out or cracked. That's bad news. These batteries usually use lead acid, which means they can leak sulfuric acid. Yes, actual acid. That stuff can burn your skin and eyes, and it also gives off hydrogen gas, which is super flammable. If there's a spark nearby, boom, fire or explosion. Same with the fuel systems. A lot of older tractors run on gasoline, which is already dangerous around heat. But instead of sealed tanks and high-quality fuel lines like modern machines have, these older tractors often have basic taps or caps that can leak without warning. If gas leaks onto a hot engine or an exhaust pipe, it can catch fire fast. 15. High-pressure hydraulic leaks. Hydraulics are used in tractors to lift stuff like loader arms or to help with steering. But what a lot of people don't know is that hydraulic fluid under pressure can be insanely dangerous. I'm not just talking about it spraying everywhere and making a mess. I mean it can literally cut you or shoot fluid into your skin. Yes, even a tiny leak that looks like a little spray or mist can go deep into your body and cause major health problems. Some people didn't even feel it right away and thought it was a scratch, but then their hand or arm swelled up and needed surgery. This usually happens when a hose gets old and wears out, or sometimes it's just a small crack or pinhole, but the pressure inside is so strong that the fluid shoots out like a needle. And because the hoses are often under the loader or near the back of the tractor, it's easy to accidentally lean on one or brush your hand against it. If you ever see a leak, don't touch it. Use a piece of cardboard or paper to check where it's coming from, never your hands. 16. Poor visibility and lighting. One of the biggest problems with old tractors is how hard they are to see, especially on roads or when it starts to get dark. Most vintage tractors don't have bright lights, working blinkers, or even a reflective triangle in the back. That's called a slow-moving vehicle emblem. So if someone's driving behind you, especially at night or in fog, they might not notice your tractor until it's way too late. And since tractors usually move super slow, that can lead to a really bad crash. On top of that, old tractors often have huge hoods, big engines, or tools in front that block your view. You can't always see what's directly in front of you or behind you either. That makes it super easy to accidentally run over something or even someone without realizing. Modern tractors are built with big mirrors, cameras, and extra lights to help with this. But on older machines, you're kind of flying blind. If you're using one of these older tractors, try to make it more visible. Add reflective tape, wear bright clothes, or even attach battery-powered lights if the built-in ones are too dim. Always double-check your surroundings before backing up or turning. 17. Open station controls. Old tractors can be full of little traps, and one of the worst is all the exposed controls. I'm talking about levers, gears, knobs, and rods. Most of them are just sitting out in the open with no guard. If you're not careful, your fingers can get pinched or crushed when you shift gears, engage the PTO, or move the throttle. Even worse, some of the metal parts can get really hot, like the muffler or parts near the engine. One quick bump and you're burned or snagged on something. The danger gets even higher when you're wearing loose clothes or gloves. A sleeve or hoodie string can catch on a moving part before you know it. And if you're leaning over while the tractor is running, you could easily get pulled in or hit by a lever snapping back. It's not always obvious either. Some of these moving parts look harmless, but can pinch or jam your hand if you're not paying attention. Modern tractors usually come with guards or shields that cover these parts, so you don't have to worry as much. But older models? You've got to stay alert the entire time. Always keep your hands clear of anything that moves. 18. Absence of modern safety interlocks. Back when older tractors were built, safety wasn't really the main focus. That's why a lot of them don't have what we now call safety interlocks, features that basically stop the machine from doing something dumb or dangerous. For example, many modern tractors won't even start unless the gear is in neutral or the driver is sitting in the seat. That way, it can't just take off by accident. But old tractors? Nope. You can start them while they're still in gear, and if you're not careful, they'll lurch forward as soon as the engine fires up. That's super dangerous. There's also no deadman switch on most vintage tractors. That means the engine keeps running even if the driver falls off. So if you slip or get bumped off while it's moving, the tractor just keeps going, possibly straight into a fence, a ditch, or even a person. On top of that, the PTO power takeoff can stay spinning even if you're not around, which could be deadly if someone else walks up to it without knowing. These old machines basically depend on human memory and habits to stay safe. Forget to pull the brake? Left it in gear? Didn't notice the PTO was on? Any one of those can cause a major accident. And finally, this last one might be the most overlooked danger of all. 19. No differential lock. Two-wheel drive, 2WD tractors are still used a lot, especially the older ones, but they've got a big weakness: traction. When both back wheels are supposed to spin, they do fine on flat, dry ground. But if one wheel hits mud, a rut, or loose gravel, it might start spinning while the other wheel just sits there doing nothing. That's because old tractors don't have something called a differential lock, which is a system that helps both wheels work together even if one is slipping. So what happens? You lose control. The tractor can spin, skid, or just get stuck. And if you're on a slope or near a ditch, it can slide sideways and maybe even tip over. That's seriously dangerous. Plus, when you try to brake, an open differential, which just means there's no lock, makes one wheel stop faster than the other. It feels like you're getting pulled to one side, which is super sketchy when you're going downhill or turning. Modern tractors have this feature built in, especially the four-wheel drive ones. But older 2WD models usually don't, which means you've got to be extra careful. Who knew old tractors could be this risky? Smash that like button if you learned something new. Hit subscribe so you never miss wild stuff like this, and tell us in the comments which one shocked you the most.